Well, let me start off with a little bit of a story here. Why am I here? Why am I here today? Well, it's an important question, and it's actually one that I lost sight of a few years ago when I was coaching my 12-year-old son's baseball team. One evening we were playing a game, and first inning, and we had a runner on first base, and ground ball hit into the infield. Second baseman fields it, flips it to the shortstop for the out at second base. Well, the umpire called the runner out at second base, but he also called our batter out at first base, called it a double play. He said it was interference on Michael because he didn't slide at second base. So I was a little frustrated by that. So I jogged out to have a little talk with the umpire just to see what was going on. So I got out there for what turned out to be a very short conversation. I felt that he missed the call. I felt that he misinterpreted the rule, and I felt that he was confusing my players. He felt that I needed to watch the rest of the game from my car. So, getting tossed, getting ejected from a youth baseball game was certainly the low point of that season. But as I sat there in the dark, I really reflected on, excuse me, my throat is getting dry here. I had a disaster with my coffee this morning. It spilled in my car at the railroad tracks there. So, so as I reflected with the umpire that, and sitting in my car, reflecting, on what I had done, I realized that I had lost sight of the three things that really ought to drive youth sports. Kids got to learn, kids got to be competitive, and they got to learn how to compete. And most of all, they got to have fun. And so in that moment, I had really lost sight of, why am I here? Why am I here? That's what I'm there for as a coach. I had lost sight of that. And I think as workers, as coaches, as people, we lose sight of that question a lot. We don't ask ourselves that enough. Why am I here? What am I here to do? So I'm here today to talk about really three things. One is, the big thing we're going to talk about is fun. But I also want to talk a little bit about learning and being competitive, because those are three legs of a stool that if we do things right, that if we're learning, if we're at the right competitive level, and we're having fun, we can have a lot of success in whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's on the sports field, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's being an entrepreneur, whatever it is. So that's kind of why I'm here today. Let me hear from you a little bit. Let me hear, why are you here? A couple of questions I'd like to go around here. What's your central issue? What is it that kind of brought you here today? What is the central issue that you're wrestling with now? From a work perspective, from a job perspective, from a business perspective, if you're inventing something, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, what is this central issue? Because this is something I want us to come back to today. We're going to have this be a fairly hands-on session. So what's your central issue? And then secondly, what do you hope to get out of today? What do you want to get out of today? So let's go around. Bill, you want to start? What's your central issue? And let's keep it fairly brief here, but it'll help me as we go forward.
I guess for me, one of the things is like flexibility in the workplace. It seems like we have a lot of pretty rigid organizations, rigid schedules, rigid rules, rigid bureaucracies, and that leads to people not being optimal in getting their work done.
Okay. So kind of battling through the rigidity of a work situation. Okay.
Yeah, there's lots of variety there, but
right.
Yeah.
And so what do you personally hope to get out of this today? Any tools, skills,
I don't know,
just
some
strategies?
Ideas.
Okay. All right. Sherry, you want to go next?
I'm in academia, and we're very, very good at the science of science, but we're very bad at the business of science.
Okay.
Right? So whether I end up as an employer or an employee, depending how my future pans out, there are some teams that I think carry over from one business structure to another. Doesn't matter what people are doing really for a living and what kind of business is it, but it's really what I'm trying to learn as to, I see grown people scream at each other and sort of grab each other's throats, whether it's academia or it's biotech industry.
Mm-hmm.
That has an underlying issues that are common across, and how to have fun, have some goal, and see yourself in an environment where you can thrive and actually contribute. I think there's a common message, and you're trying to teach us that. That's precisely what I'm here for.
Good,
I
good.
get it.
Okay. David?
Deb told me just a few moments ago that I registered twice, so I was destined to be.
So you may get twice the benefit of this class than everybody
I
else.
think it'll be exponential. The topic jumped out at me and said, I need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have a particular focus I was working on 2 days ago when I signed up for the second time. I'm not sure when I signed up for the first time. But since then, actually, since about 2.5 hours ago, something came up that brought a lot of things together. And I used to own an organization called the Humor Network. We were all about bringing humor into people's lives and using that as an email direct marketing play.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the management team, now if I called them morose, I would be giving them too much credit.
Oh, ironic.
Yeah, I know. And that's what our PR guy said, who's now one of the top PR guys in the country, and we stayed friends. So I want to make sure that if I do launch this new idea that I have, that it's fun.
Okay.
I find the right fun people to surround myself with, and open to learn, always open to learning.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of why I'm here.
Good,
Also, I'm just a lifelong learner.
good, good. Sure?
I run a network of sitters boarding dogs. And there's just no greater joy than watching dogs have fun. And the last couple of years, I'm so tired of struggling. I have this fantastic model that people absolutely love, and it has been nightmarish, like the thousands of dollars and the thousands of hours of time that have gone into trying to make it grow with the people. That's the most difficult part. And I've fallen into this hole, like where I'm becoming like the difficulty that I'm having. And
Okay.
those are two different things. And I've always put a huge, held it with great esteem I've always valued a great deal enjoyment and having fun. I've never one of these put off everything today for some reward in heaven or when we retire someday. And I'm missing it. I'm struggling so hard, and I want the fun back. So, yeah, taking the FU out of fun.
I haven't heard that one. That's good. I like that. That's good. Well, this is good. We've got a very well-rounded group. We've got the workplace, we've got the sciences, we've got the entrepreneurial, and we've got the entrepreneurial kind of whole life picture here. So I think this will be good, and I think we'll be able to learn from one another. Tom, why don't we have you and Deb as well? Is there a central challenge or big issue? You're kind of transitioning a little bit here.
Yeah, one of the big projects we have going on in the background is I want to create this museum of future inventions.
Ooh.
And
Museum of Future Inventions. Okay.
what are all the big things that haven't been created yet?
Uh-huh.
And I just think that more than anything, that needs to be fun.
Right.
Just, playful ideas. Don't get too hung up on, that's not going to work.
Right.
If you say that enough, then it won't. So, I mean, that's one thing we have going on in the background. Deb probably has some other ideas.
Well, and when you're saying about problems, I think that sometimes we have a tendency to bite off more than we can chew.
Mhm.
We only have 4 people, Tom and I, and then 2 staff people. And so I think that sometimes that takes the fun out of what we do because it gets very overwhelming.
Right.
And it's not about the museum, because the museum, I think, is a great idea. But it's trying to figure out the steps
Mm-hmm.
to get there, because we know that it's not going to happen tomorrow. So.
Right.
Dan,
Yeah.
just before we all make sure we're here for a good reason, there's an interesting pattern that I've noticed. Sometimes if people are so cheerful about what they do, and you hear comments like, oh my God, she's so enthusiastic, you feel like shoving a lemon in her face. It's almost as if you are cheerful about what you're doing, people expect you being involved with your project, that you should carry a face of drudgery, like that's serious, I'm like semi-miserable how much I'm doing. And if you don't have that face, people sometimes assume that you're not having enough on your plate. So how do you go about telling people, no, I have my plate full, I'm just carrying a positive attitude?
I think you got to basically just tell them that, what you just said. I think and you got to find out who you're working with. I mean, if somebody's got some unfair expectations of you or of work or of the workplace, that this should be drudgery, that says more about them than it does about you. And so it may be time to have a conversation with that person and say, hey, I feel like I keep getting stuff dumped on me here, and I feel it's because I have a positive attitude. That's just kind of who I am, and that's who I bring. That's what I bring to this endeavor. And so if you're reading that I don't have enough to do because I have a smile on my face, then I don't want to turn into the person that has to have a frown, because I'm not going to enjoy working here anymore, and I'm not going to be able to do anything.
But it almost sounds as if in some places, like state of misery is almost a standard.
Oh, there are whole companies that work that way. Absolutely. Oh yeah, that's not just you. No. I work with companies a lot that's just kind of the culture. And you see people that, they're trudging around the hallways, like this, and somebody has a smile on their face, and people are like, ooh, what's the matter with them? And my belief is that there's nothing wrong with that person. It's the other person that is having the problem with it. But it's kind of a conditioned response, if you will, to that work environment and maybe the work. And that's why corporate change and culture change is so difficult in organizations, is because you have to fight that mindset, and you have to teach people a different way of looking at their work, at themselves, and probably the biggest part is themselves and the work environment. Keep that question in mind, because that's a good one. And as we get into some of the theory here, that's going to be a good one. A little bit about me. I have two kids. My daughter is 12, and she is really into horses, loves her animals, cats, dogs, horses, anything with a face, she loves it. My son is 14, freshman in high school, and very much into sports. And I've coached him ever since that he was about the age of 5. And as he became a 12-year-old, I became the head coach for the first time in coaching him. And that's where the book, A Perfect Season, came out of, that season, about everything that I learned and then we learned as a team about that. And the idea of fun, learn, compete really came out of that season. And it became my coaching philosophy. It became our team philosophy and my coaching philosophy kind of all at once. As we got into that, I realized that the idea of fun, learn, compete not only works on the sports field, but it works in everything that we do. It works in the workplace. It works in our relationships. It works in our hobbies. It works in really anything and everything that we're going to do. If you think about it, if we're learning, if we're at that right competitive level where things aren't too difficult, but they aren't too easy, that there's some tension there, and that we're having fun, then we're setting ourselves up for long-term meaningful success. And so today what I'm going to talk about a little bit about sports, and I'll have a few analogies there. But I think you'll be able to see very quickly how they translate to the workplace. And then as we get into some more of the theory, I really want you guys to engage in terms of what it means to you. Because what I want you to walk away with is some real tangible goals of, so that's there, yeah. I want you to apply it to your own work and life. I want you to be able to take action as a result of this 3 hours we're going to spend together today. So in the first hour, we're going to talk about fun, learn, compete, and what it means to you. In the second hour, we're going to talk then more about fun. We're going to zero in on fun at work and how that can become your competitive advantage. And then the third hour, we're going to kind of expand that out a little bit more globally. What does that mean for teams? What does that mean for business and entrepreneurial endeavors, and your impact on others using the idea of fun? Fair enough? Okay. So what I want to do, I notice that most of you have something to write on, but I'll also give you a sheet here, especially in a workshop like this. as an idea comes to you, something that, hey, that's something new. It might be something I say. It might be something that your coworkers, you need one more? So something that you want to start doing, just write it down. This is obviously for you. We may talk about it at different times rather, but something you want to start doing, something you want to stop doing. You realize that, oh my gosh, this is putting me in a situation that I don't want to be in. It's causing problems in whatever my central issue is or other areas of my life. I want to stop that. And then things that you want to continue. Things you're doing well, you're doing right, let's make sure we continue those. So again, don't have to use it, but I think a lot of people find this helpful. All right, so again, working with kids. Kids are a lot of fun. They are a lot like animals in a certain way in terms of their enthusiasm they bring and their personalities that they bring. I've got a kid on my team. His name is Brandon. And anybody ever interacted with a kid who's a smack talker? Kid that's just talking smack all the time, he's just kind of in your face. Brandon is, well, let me describe it this way. He's the fastest kid on my team, but not only in terms of his foot speed, but his amazing ability to flap his mouth. He's very good at telling me when I've done something wrong and he's done something right. He's in your face, but it's in a very playful way, and it's contagious on the team. Not that everybody is talking that way, but it creates kind of an energy and an excitement about what he's doing that is contagious on the team. So let me tell you a little story about Brandon, because I think it kind of helps illustrate some of the concepts we're going to talk about. So there's this game, and Brandon's my leadoff hitter because, again, he's the fastest kid on the team. So first at bat, first time up, boom, he hits a solid single into left field, and he sprints down to first base. He rounds the base and claps his hand, gets back on the base. He's excited. The pitcher's is a good pitcher out there. He beat the guy, got a base hit. He's very proud of himself. So now he's standing on first base, and he looks over to me, and I'm coaching third base. He looks over to me, and his body language changes. He goes from confident and excited and proud to nonchalant. He looks over at me and kind of gives me one of these. He knows that I'm going to have him steal second base because that's baseball strategy. And he's also seen the catcher, and the catcher is about a foot shorter than every other kid on the field. The kid does not have a very good arm. So Brandon knows that even if it's a pretty good catcher, he's going to be able to steal second base. So he's nonchalant. And so I'm over there, and of course I go through the steal sign, give him the steal signal. And Brandon just kind of meanders off the base, all the vigor of a 12-year-old waiting for the bus. He's just standing over there, about a foot and a half off the base. Pitcher's not even going to try to pick him off because he doesn't have a big enough lead. Sure enough, first pitch, boom, Brandon steals second, goes in, doesn't even bother to slide. Runs into second base standing up, kind of looks over at me, a little bit cocky. Maybe that's another word for talking smack, a little bit cocky, and looks over at me at third base, kind of like, what now, coach? So I know that as soon as I get an opportunity to interact with Brandon, that he's going to be talking. I know he's going to be talking. So sure enough, end of the inning, he comes running out of the dugout. He comes running up to me and says, "Coach, did you see that? Did you see that, Coach? I stole second base. Didn't even have to slide. I am that fast." So he's a little cocky. So we've had the conversation with Brandon that that it's got to be well intentioned, and he doesn't have a big ego. Believe it or not, he doesn't have a big ego. It's all kind of part of his act and just who he is, the bravado. So I kind of looked at him after he said that. I said, "Catcher had a weak arm. My grandmother could have done that." I said, "A kid with your speed, you ought to be stealing that base off the pitcher, not off the catcher. In fact, next time you get on base, if you get on base, I want to see you getting a 4-step lead. I want to see you steal that. I want to see you reading that pitcher. I want to see you diving back into the bag. I want to see him trying to pick you off. And if your uniform isn't dirty when we get back to the dugout, you failed, bub." And then I wheeled around and I walked off. Well, sure enough, a couple innings later, he gets on base. He walks. He gets down to first base. Well, he is giddy. I mean, he is excited. He's down there on first base, and he is fired up. He is excited, and he almost can't contain himself. He's looking over at me like, "Okay, game on, coach." So, of course, I go through the steal sign, give him the steal sign. Well, this time, he's not a 12-year-old waiting for the bus. He's like a thief cracking a safe. He's over there getting his lead like this, reading the pitcher. Pitcher picks twice, and he dives back into the base, safe both times, just barely. Of course, on the first pitch, boom, he steals second base. Gets a great jump. This time he goes in sliding, slides down, and then pops up right on the base. And then he sees that the throw from the catcher went way wild and went into the outfield. So he sprints on over to third base, literally taking the extra base. So I'm standing there in the third base coaching box. As he steps on the bag, he leans down to adjust his pant cuff, and without looking up, he says, "Can your grandmother do that, Coach?" So at that point, I said, "Okay, game, set, and match. You win this round." But what it really reinforced to me, and we'll talk about this each stage of the way of Fun, Learn, Compete, we found a way to make all of those elements come alive for Brandon. That could have been just a kind of a normal, everyday drudgery thing that he never would remember. Just another game that he played, and he stole a couple of bases and got a couple of hits, and it kind of blends into the scenery of the season. But because we were able to change some things around Fun, Learn, and Compete, it became a very memorable thing for him. He learned a lot. He was at the right competitive level. He had a lot of fun, and it's something that we still talk about today. Two and a half years later, we're still talking about it because it became this memorable thing. And so I don't treat the kids on my team, I don't treat them equally. If I treated them equally, it would be this plain vanilla that would appeal to none of them. I have to treat them fairly, though. And I think that's a key. And to be able to do that, I got to know them. I got to know what appeals to them and what style and what personality they have. So let me go through kind of each one of these. Fun. Talk about just a little bit about why this is important, though, first. This idea of Fun, Learn, Compete. Trend going on in youth sports right now, I think, is very, very alarming. We live in a hyper-competitive environment. You think about us as adults, what we bring to youth sports, what we bring to society. Everything is very, very competitive. I mean, we compete for jobs, we compete for budgets, we compete for spouses. I mean, well, this parking lot was fairly vacant here this morning, but we compete for parking spaces. I mean, drive I-25, it's nuts. We're a competitive society. And it's this idea of just win, baby, that drives a lot of that. Research shows that in youth sports, adults want to win. But the research also shows that kids want something different. There's been several studies that have been conducted, and what kids want first is they want to have fun. The reason that they do their activities, whether it's youth baseball, whether it's chess club, whether it's choir, whether it's soccer, whatever it is, they do it because they want to have fun. And then depending on the study, next on the list is they want to be with friends, they want to learn new things, they want to learn how to compete, they want to learn about that game. Usually last or very close to the bottom on that list is winning. However, you've got adults saying, we're going to win. And so this creates tension, and as a result, sad statistic, by the time that kids are 15 years old, 80% are going to have quit their sport. 4 in 5 kids will quit their sport by the time they're 15.
Not just because of girls?
No, that probably is somewhat of a factor, but that's true of girls and boys.
I was going to say, is that number different of girls?
It probably is slightly different, but it's not significantly different, not profoundly different. No. And so what that means is that because we are so focused on winning, and that becomes so paramount to coaches and parents and driving this atmosphere and driving this culture, is that we're losing good kids. There are also studies about kids that they fake injuries so that they don't have to play. I looked at several articles on the internet, and there were kids that they actually had relief when they were going into the orthopedic surgeon, and the surgeon said, "I'm sorry, you're out for the season." And the kids were actually relieved of, okay, gosh, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to practice 5 days a week. I don't have to do those things. Well, we're also driving good adults out of the system. I know a lot of people who they don't want to be the coach anymore, or they don't want to be the head coach because they have to deal with the crazy parents, they have to deal with the other crazy coaches. They want to just deal with the kids. And so we're losing good kids and we're losing good adults. All right, so what does that mean in the workplace? I think a lot of the same things are happening, especially in light of the recession we've just gone through for the last 3 years. The American worker has been beaten up. We've been doing the job, one person's been doing the job of 2 or 3 in the workplace. Those are fortunate to have jobs. and it's become a drudgery. Now, because we've been in a recession, I think we've had to focus on this idea of winning. We have to, just to stay in business, just to keep our jobs, we've got to focus on the bottom line and winning. And to a certain degree, business is always like that. But American workers are saying, you know what, I've had enough. The last 2 or 3 years, I've had enough. I want something different. Statistics are out that in the next 18 months, 1 in 3 Americans is going to change jobs. 2 in 3 are going to be looking. 1 in 3 is going to change jobs. Now you think about who is going to change jobs, who's going to have options to change jobs. They're going to be the best talent. They're going to be the people that are most engaged. They're going to be the people with the best talent, the most skills, because they're going to have options. They're going to be able to change jobs fairly easily. So if you're thinking as a manager of people, if you're thinking as an entrepreneur, an owner of a business, my gosh, where your talent could disappear here very quickly in the next year. And so what I'd like to pose to you today is that this idea of fun, learn, compete is about the journey. Winning is about the destination. Fun, learn, compete is about the journey to get us there. Journey is about it's about fun, learn, compete. All right. Let's talk about each of these real briefly, and then we're going to dive in and start talking about what this means to you. All right. So loosely defined term, learn. For our purposes or my purposes, I'm talking about it being the acquisition of new skills, beliefs, knowledge, or attitudes. That we're acquiring something new. We're bringing something new into our the term psychologists use is the idea of schema. We're bringing something new. We're changing our schema, our mental model of the world. Something new is doing that. And a lot of ways to get that knowledge through talking to people, reading something, observing things, watching the news, those types of things. So that's what Learn is about. Well, why is learning important? A couple of reasons. One is, and there are tons and tons of studies. I just picked one. They looked at healthcare workers, mostly nurses, but folks that were in a hospital in a healthcare setting. And they said, okay, if you're learning, what is the impact to your health? And they found that 80% of the people said that they reported physical health benefits. The people that were learning versus those that were not in learning situations, and these were people that were going back to school. They were either taking professional development classes, they were going back to college, they were getting certifications, whatever it was. They were in a structured learning environment. They had fewer illnesses. Those with pain were able to manage it better, and they felt less tired. Exhaustion didn't get to them because they were learning. On the emotional side, emotional mental health, 89% said that they felt better emotionally and mentally. And then there were other health habits that were good side benefits as well. So the bottom line is if it wasn't enough, learning is good for your health. Jack Welch also said that, you think of from an organization standpoint, why is it important? Well, an organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action rapidly, and key word there is rapidly, is the ultimate competitive advantage. So you think about your life, your work, and all the things that you have to keep track of. There's a lot more to know and there's a lot more to learn these days than there were 10, 15, 20 years ago. We have a lot more tools to get that knowledge and that learning, but there's a lot more to learn. You can pick up the Wall Street Journal, and that stands for everything from New York Times to Yahoo to everything that you can get on the internet. You think of if you're running a business or you're managing part of a business or a budget, you've got marketing, you've got healthcare, you've got social media. I mean, there's a ton to learn and there's a ton to know out there. And so if you're going to be able to compete, as Jack Welch said, you got to be able to do that, to learn that and translate that into action. So again, there are health benefits to learning, and there is your value to an organization, so you can stay employed and stay profitable. All right, 3 things I'd like for us to think about here in terms of what we can learn. And this translates directly from the baseball field, but I think it really works in the workplace as well. About the game or the activity. So if you're a worker, thinking about your task, your job, your role, there are fundamentals, there's strategy, there's nuances about that task that I can learn. There's also things I can learn about myself. Strengths, weaknesses, likes, dislikes. You learn a lot about yourself, and that's important to know. That's really important to know as you think about being valuable to yourself or to an organization. And then finally, there are great life lessons we can learn if we're paying attention. About effort. I think about my son a lot about this and translating life lessons from effort to results. How much effort am I putting into the results that I'm getting? If we're open to these things, there's a lot we can learn. So the question is, what did Brandon learn? My smack-talking buddy there, in that situation. Well, we're able to change it so that he was able to learn a new skill. If we had kept it the way it was, he was not going to learn anything new from that situation. He was just going to steal his base and kind of move on, and it kind of blends into the noise of the season. We changed the learning opportunity that, okay, you've mastered that, let's learn something new. So let's read that picture, let's get a larger lead, let's challenge ourselves to learn something new. It made it much more impactful for him, and he was more successful. He had more fun as a result of that. All right, let's talk about compete. So my definition of compete is that the outcome is in doubt, and you have to learn to use your strengths and minimize your weaknesses to put yourself or the team in a position to enjoy success. So it's this idea that the outcome is in doubt. And it's this, what that really translates to is the Goldilocks syndrome there, is that we're looking for that baby bear, that everything is just right. It's that sweet spot. It's not too hard where we're just completely overmatched. I mean, that's not a good situation, whether you're playing second base or you're in a work situation. And I've been there myself. I've been put in work situations where I was overmatched, and that is not a good, healthy situation to be in. Also been in situations where it's too easy, and so you're just kind of cakewalking through things. And in a sports analogy, that's the trophy hunter, the guy that is just out there to win the trophies, doesn't care about anything else. And so thinking about Brandon, we made it so that he was competing against the right person. He had been taught up to that point to steal bases off the catcher, so he was competing against the catcher. We changed it so that he was competing off of the pitcher, and that made a huge difference. And so this idea of fun. What is fun? Well, let's talk about for just a minute some of the research about fun in the workplace, of why it's important. Then we're going to define it here. But I've got a number of studies here. I've got a list of 8 or 9 studies here. But talks about it being a significant factor in job satisfaction, task performance. So not only being satisfied with my job, but actually doing the work. And then what they call interpersonal citizenship behavior. So that means being a good team player, essentially. So if I'm having fun, the work that I'm doing is better, I'm more satisfied with it, and I've got better relationships with the people around me. What that other study talked about in terms of learning lessens the effects of exhaustion, fun is the same thing, is that fun lessens the effects of exhaustion. If we're having fun, we're less likely to feel exhausted. There's more energy coming in and going out from us. And then finally, this is interesting, thinking about the workplace, Generation Y, the millennials, people that are topping out at about 30, kind of down into their teens, they have different expectations about work. They believe it should be fun. Now, I'm a Gen Xer, and then we've got the baby boomers who are getting set to retire. We have different expectations about work. Work is work because it's very different than play. If it was supposed to be fun, we would have called it something else, but it's work. I go to work, and to your point, it's kind of that drudgery. And so my bet is that the person that you were saying is lumping more on the plate because, well, you're smiling, therefore you don't have enough to do. I'm betting that person was probably a Gen Xer or a baby boomer. Is that right? Yeah. Because their expectations about work is that it should be work. That if you want to have fun, then put your time in, punch the clock, and go have it somewhere else, but you're not going to have it on my money, on my dime. Generation Y, though, they believe very fundamentally different about that this idea of work and fun is blended. So that affects everything from work schedules to where I work, I want to work out of my house. I want to be able to work from the beach. I want to work from wherever it is. I want to work a shift from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. That's going to be more fun for me. And
I'm the Gen Wire.
okay. Right. And I think I think you raise a good point, because I think those expectations are starting to filter up as well. That I think a number of Gen Xers and baby boomers are kind of looking at that, and while that is causing us angst and heartburn, it's also, well, if they were able to do it, why can't I do that too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it has to be distinguished. Fun has to be distinguished from free for all.
Absolutely.
Because there are good management practices that you can pull out of articles from like 1970s from Harvard Business Review that are still valid today. Structure is important, otherwise we're like oozing out.
Yep, absolutely. And that gets exactly to my definition. I think fun is an enjoyable activity towards a meaningful goal. To your point, if it is just free for all, that's something else. In my book, that's not necessarily fun, because that's not going to last. It's just not going to last. You can't sustain that type of fun over time. And so then if we're working towards this meaningful goal and we're trying to find that enjoyable activity, there are three things that I think we've got to manage. One is the work tasks. The work that I'm doing, the things that I'm doing on a regular basis, the tasks. Second would be the work environment. So that could be everything from the physical place that I'm sitting in, this desk, this chair, this computer, this stuff, the physical environment around me, to some more of the cultural things. What's the cultural environment? What is the organization that I'm in? What do they stand for? What industry am I in? And what do they stand for? What is that environment? How does all of that impact me? And then the third thing we've got to manage are the relationships. The relationships around us, the connections, the social element of this endeavor that I'm in. How do I manage that so that all of that equates to this idea of fun? Finally, fun makes an emotional connection with the activity that brings the enjoyment, pleasure, or satisfaction. So it's not, what is fun for you isn't necessarily going to be fun for me. It's got to make a connection with me, and it's got to generate some sort of an emotional response in me that says, man, that was fun, that was enjoyable. And so that's our goal here, is to try to find that emotional connection around a pleasure or satisfaction. So on the flip side, that's what fun is. Fun is not, it's not silly. This is the thing that drives me nuts about in the workplace, is that you've got a manager say, okay, well, employee survey said that we want to have more fun at work. So we're going to have pizza parties once a month on Friday afternoons, and we're all going to get hats, and we're going to wear a silly hat. And David, we're going to put you in charge of coming up with the theme for December. And Bill, you're going to be in charge of January. Won't that be fun? No. I mean, it turns into either drudgery, because it's so structured and it's so contrived, or it turns completely silly, that we're wearing the stupid hats, and or as a manager, I got to tell a stupid, corny joke, of the day.
It's forced unnatural
It's
fun.
exactly. And the thing is that silly doesn't motivate. I mean, it may be funny, we may laugh at it, but it doesn't last. You can't sustain performance over time on party hats. Fun is not play. Play is something different, and I think play is also very valuable, but in a different way. My definition of play is an unstructured activity, to me, towards an immediate or ongoing interest. But again, it's unstructured. And if you think about fun, we're talking about a meaningful goal here. Play is more unstructured. It's kind of out there, and it's trying to tap our creativity. Fun is as well. There's a creative component to fun, but it doesn't necessarily have to be there. But play is more of a creative endeavor, but you don't have to have that goal. And it doesn't necessarily have to be linked to deeper meaning or larger meaning. It's just, I feel like playing with a Tinker Toy right now, and that somehow brings me enjoyment. Okay, that's great. That's great. Yeah.
One thing I found is that if I'm giving a keynote and I'm wearing a DaVinci costume, people don't take me seriously. And so I stopped wearing it. you have a very different attitude when you see somebody in a costume. Perceive that person differently.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, how did they treat you differently? What were some of the things either they said or did that?
Oh, it's a lot of time. Well, why did you wear the costume? Just.
Because this talk doesn't go with the costume.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff is tended to be some pretty deep thinking.
Right.
Stuff.
Right.
And the when you're up there in costume, you're a character. That makes
Right.
it to be more entertaining. So,
Right.
yeah. So it's a mismatch
Uh-huh.
on my part.
Right. Right. Okay. We've got about 5 minutes here before we take a break. I want to just real briefly talk about a few components of fun here, and we're going to go into these in a lot more detail. Once you're going to come up with your own list, but I think these are some of the things that, from a common denominator standpoint, there's a social component to fun, this idea of adventure or creativity. That there's a challenge, and this brings the idea of compete. Here's where our learn. So in a lot of ways, I think competing and learning are part of this idea of fun. I think they feed into this idea of fun. And then here's the other distinguishing thing. There's got to be some mission and meaning in the fun if it's going to be sustainable over time. If you're really looking at fun to be a competitive advantage and drive performance over time, there's got to be some mission, there's got to be some meaning behind it. And I say, would running a marathon be fun? Anybody run a marathon? No?
Next lifetime, actually.
You've got that plan for next life? Yes.
Well, my nephew runs 50 milers.
50 milers, that's
And win and win.
well, I bring it up because
There's no competition.
No, they're actually 100 milers.
yeah, that's crazy. I've got to, yeah. I've run 4 marathons, believe it or not. Nothing real recently, but as I think back to, well, people have asked me, well, was it fun? And I say, well, yeah, it was. Actually, it was. It was an enjoyable experience. I did have fun doing it. But then I think about it, and I actually, looked at some of the pictures. They have a photographer at various stages along the way, and I've looked at some of those pictures, and it's like, really? I was having fun? And the fact is that I think fun operates on kind of its own time frame. And so at that moment in time when I was at mile 19 and my hips were hurting and I was, had salt on my face from the sweat and I was hungry and I was tired and thirsty and all of that and beaten down, I may not have been feeling the joy and of fun at that moment. But once I crossed the finish line, taken kind of as a whole, piecing it all together, that whole experience was fun. And that's where that emotional connection came back in, was later on. And I think we also do that from the good old days, back in the good old days. The good old days were ideal. They were always fun. They were always all those things. And I think that's the idea of time, being able to put those into a different context, real or unreal. All right, as we go into break, I want you to think about think about your central issue, think about your central question, your central thing. What brought you here today? Where do you fit on this? Here's the idea of fun, here's learn, here's compete. This is the sweet spot if we're right in the middle, where everything is in balance, where everything's at the right challenge, we're having fun, and we're learning. That brings us right here. My bet is we don't stay there for very long. When we get there, there's something that's always kind of pulling us in one direction or another. So as we go into break here, I want you to think about where are you on this, and when we come back, we'll talk about that.